We like to think we're living through uniquely modern problems. Loneliness, identity, the pressure to succeed, the fear of losing the people we love, the longing to find where we belong. But 3,000 years ago, someone had already written about all of it. That story was the Odyssey, written by none other than Homer. At first glance, it's an epic about gods, monsters, witches and impossible voyages. But beneath all of that lies something far more familiar. It's the story of a man trying to get home, and everything he loses, learns, and becomes along the way. And that's precisely why people are still reading it after 3,000 years. Before we unpack the ideas that have kept the Odyssey alive for over 3 millennia, here's the journey that started it all. After 10 years of fighting in the Trojan War, Odysseus finally sets sail for home. But his first victory turns costly, as greed claims many of his men. Then they reach a land where forgetting home feels easier than returning. Escaping the Cyclops through wit, one proud mistake earns Poseidon's endless wrath. With the winds at his command, home is within reach, until distrust throws it all away. Blown off course, they sail into the land of giants, where almost the entire fleet is destroyed. The few who survive fall into the hands of Circe, who turns his men into pigs before becoming an unexpected ally. Following her guidance, Odysseus journeys into the underworld to learn what lies ahead. Armed with that knowledge, he resists the siren's irresistible song. But the sea offers no mercy, forcing him to choose between two impossible dangers. Though they survive, his starving crew defies the gods by slaughtering Helios' sacred cattle. The punishment leaves Odysseus alone, stranded for 7 years on Calypso's island, where he chooses home over immortality. Shipwrecked once again, the Phaeacians welcome him and finally help him reach home. 20 years after leaving, Odysseus returns, not to peace, but to one final battle for his home. On the surface, the Odyssey is the story of a man traveling from one island to another. But beneath every monster, every storm, and every detour lies something much more familiar. It's a story about what it means to be human. Throughout the Odyssey, Odysseus has one goal. Not wealth, not glory, not conquest, simply, to go home. It sounds almost ordinary, but that's exactly why it matters. Because home isn't just a place on a map. It's the people who know us, the memories that shape us, the life we hope is still waiting when the journey is over. Every obstacle Odysseus faces is, in one way or another, an attempt to pull him away from that goal. The Lotus Eaters tempt him to forget it entirely. Circe offers comfort, Calypso offers immortality, even the sea itself seems determined to keep him from ever reaching Ithaca. Yet through every storm, every loss, and every impossible choice, one thought never leaves him. Home. Perhaps the clearest example comes on Ogygia, the island of Calypso. She offers Odysseus something no human has ever been offered. Eternal youth, eternal life, freedom from suffering, everything people have spent history dreaming about. And he says no, because immortality means very little if it comes at the cost of the people you love. Homer is asking a question that still resonates today. What makes a place feel like home? Is it the house, the land, or the people waiting for us there? For Odysseus, the answer is clear. Ithaca isn't the richest kingdom in Greece. It isn't the safest. It certainly isn't the easiest life he could choose. But it's his. We often think of home as somewhere we leave behind. Yet many of us spend our lives trying to find our way back to it. Sometimes that means returning to a place. Sometimes it means rebuilding a family. Sometimes it means rediscovering a version of ourselves we thought we'd lost. That's why Odysseus' journey still feels familiar. Because, in one way or another, we're all searching for somewhere, or someone, that reminds us where we truly belong. But returning home wasn't enough. 20 years had changed Ithaca. And more importantly, they had changed Odysseus. The man who left for Troy was not the man who came back. When Odysseus sets sail for Troy, he knows exactly who he is. A king, a husband, a father, a celebrated warrior. His place in the world is certain, but 20 years have a way of changing a person. By the time he reaches Ithaca again, almost everything that once defined him has been stripped away. His kingdom is overrun, His friends are gone. His appearance has changed. Even his own son barely knows him. The man who returns isn't recognized by his people, because, in many ways, he no longer recognizes himself. One of the most fascinating parts of the Odyssey is that Odysseus doesn't come home as a king. He comes home as a beggar. Hidden beneath rags and wrinkles, he walks through his own palace unnoticed. He listens. He observes. He learns who has remained loyal, and who has forgotten him. It's a brilliant strategy, but it's also symbolic. Homer seems to ask an unsettling question. If no one recognizes you, who are you? Throughout the poem, Odysseus is constantly changing identities. He calls himself nobody before the Cyclops. He disguises himself to survive. He adapts his words, his appearance, even his behavior depending on the people around him. Yet beneath every disguise, one thing never changes: his determination to return to the life he chose. We often imagine identity as something fixed, a single version of ourselves. But life rarely works that way. We become different people through loss, through success, through failure, through the passing of time. Sometimes we leave home as one person, and return as someone our younger self would barely recognize. Perhaps that's why the reunions in the Odyssey feel so powerful. They're not simply moments of recognition, they're moments of acceptance. The people who truly love Odysseus don't just welcome back the king who left for Troy. They embrace the man he has become. Reinvention, however, isn't always voluntary. Sometimes it's shaped by the choices we make. And no choice reveals Odysseus' character more clearly than the moment his pride gets the better of him. If there's one flaw that defines Odysseus, it isn't his anger. It isn't greed. It isn't a lack of courage. It's pride. Again and again, Homer shows us that intelligence can save a man, but pride can destroy everything it has won. Nowhere is this clearer than in the cave of Polyphemus. Trapped inside with no escape, Odysseus devises one of the most brilliant plans in Greek mythology. He blinds the Cyclops, hides beneath the sheep, escapes against impossible odds. It is a perfect victory, until the moment he sails away. Safe at last, he can't resist one final act. He reveals his real name, not because he has to, but because he wants the world to know who defeated the Cyclops. In that single moment, triumph becomes tragedy. Polyphemus calls upon his father, Poseidon, and what could have been a short voyage home becomes 10 more years of suffering. It's a mistake that's surprisingly human. We all have moments when success tempts us to celebrate too soon, to seek recognition, to prove ourselves, to have the last word. But the Odyssey reminds us that not every victory needs an audience. Sometimes, the wisest thing we can do is simply sail away. Yet Homer's idea of pride goes beyond a single boast. Throughout the epic, the greatest downfalls come from people who believe they are above limits. The suitors grow so certain of their own power that they ignore every warning. The crew, convinced they know better, slaughter the sacred cattle of Helios despite clear instructions not to. Even kings and warriors discover that neither strength nor status can place them above the will of the gods. Pride, in the Odyssey, is rarely about confidence. It's about forgetting that actions always have consequences. Thousands of years later, that lesson still feels familiar. Pride can make us ignore good advice, damage relationships, turn small mistakes into lasting ones, convince us that being right matters more than doing what's right. Homer doesn't suggest that ambition or confidence are flaws. He warns us about the moment confidence becomes arrogance, the moment we stop listening, the moment we believe we're untouchable. But if pride can lead us astray, temptation can keep us there. And throughout his journey, Odysseus faces another challenge just as dangerous as monsters or storms: the temptation to choose the easier path. Throughout his journey, Odysseus faces creatures that are terrifying: cyclopes, sea monsters, angry gods. But the dangers that threaten him the most don't always come with claws or swords. They come disguised as comfort, as pleasure, as shortcuts, as the promise that he can stop struggling. The first temptation is perhaps the simplest. The lotus eaters offer no violence, no threats, only a fruit that makes people forget their homes, forget their purpose, forget why they ever wanted to leave. It's a quiet temptation, not to do something wrong, but to stop caring altogether. Odysseus understands that the greatest danger isn't the lotus itself. It's surrendering the desire to keep going. Then comes Circe. Her island offers safety, comfort, a life untouched by hardship. After everything Odysseus has endured, staying would be easy. Yet even paradise can become a prison if it keeps us from the life we're meant to live. The sirens present a different kind of temptation. They don't promise pleasure, they promise knowledge. They know exactly what each sailor longs to hear. Rather than trusting his own willpower, Odysseus does something remarkable. He plans for his own weakness. He orders his crew to tie him to the mast. And no matter how desperately he begs to be released, they refuse. It's one of the earliest reminders that self-control isn't about pretending we're immune to temptation. It's about recognizing our limits before temptation arrives. Finally, there's Calypso. She offers what many would consider the greatest gift imaginable: eternal youth, immortality, freedom from pain. Yet Odysseus turns it down. Because a perfect life means very little if it isn't truly your own. He chooses a mortal life filled with uncertainty, over an eternal life without purpose. Homer doesn't portray temptation as something obviously evil. Quite the opposite. Every temptation in the Odyssey offers something genuinely desirable: comfort, escape, pleasure, certainty. The problem isn't wanting those things. It's allowing them to replace the life we're striving to build. Today, our temptations look different. Endless distractions, instant gratification, the comfort of staying where it's safe instead of pursuing what's meaningful. We all encounter moments that invite us to forget our goals, delay our dreams, or choose what's easy over what's worthwhile. That's why this ancient story still resonates. Because self-control isn't simply resisting temptation. It's remembering what matters most when temptation makes us forget. Yet through every trial, one thing continues to guide Odysseus forward. Not glory, not revenge, but the people waiting for him. Because at its heart, the Odyssey is also a story about loyalty, and the enduring power of love. Throughout the Odyssey, kingdoms rise and fall. Heroes die, fortunes change, even the gods can be unpredictable. But amid all that uncertainty, one thing remains remarkably constant: loyalty. It's the force that keeps hope alive long after reason would have given up. No character embodies this more than Penelope. For 20 years, she lives in a world that insists Odysseus is never coming back. Friends lose hope, suitors fill her home, time itself seems to move on. Yet she refuses to let go. Not because she's passive, but because she's every bit as clever as Odysseus. By weaving a burial shroud during the day and secretly undoing it each night, she turns patience into strategy. While Odysseus survives through wit at sea, Penelope survives through wit at home. Loyalty also shapes Telemachus. He grows up with stories of a father he can barely remember. He could have accepted that Odysseus was gone. Instead, he sets out in search of the truth. His journey mirrors his father's, not across dangerous seas, but toward understanding who he is and what kind of man he wants to become. Some of the poem's most moving acts of loyalty come from those with the least power. Eumaeus, the swineherd, remains faithful to his king despite years of uncertainty. And then there's Argos, Odysseus' old dog. Neglected and forgotten by everyone else, Argos recognizes his master instantly. He wags his tail one final time, and dies knowing Odysseus has finally come home. It's one of the quietest moments in the epic, and one of its most heartbreaking. What makes these relationships so enduring is that love in the Odyssey is rarely portrayed as a feeling alone. It's a choice, a commitment renewed day after day. Penelope chooses to wait, Telemachus chooses to believe, Eumaeus chooses to remain faithful. Odysseus chooses, again and again, to keep sailing toward the people he loves, even when easier lives are offered to him. In many stories, love is measured by grand gestures. Homer suggests something quieter. That love is revealed through consistency, through trust, through showing up when it would be easier to walk away. Perhaps that's why these relationships still resonate. Because all of us hope to find people who remain beside us, not when life is easy, but when time, distance, and hardship put that bond to the test. Yet the Odyssey doesn't just explore relationships. It also challenges our assumptions about who holds power. Again and again, Homer shows that strength alone is rarely enough. More often than not, it is intelligence that changes the course of the story. When we think of ancient Greek heroes, we often imagine power as physical strength. Warriors, kings, great battles fought with swords and spears. But the Odyssey tells a different story. Again and again, Homer suggests that the greatest victories are won not by force, but by intelligence. Odysseus isn't remembered because he was the strongest Greek. He's remembered because he was the cleverest. Every monster he defeats, every impossible situation he escapes, depends less on strength than on strategy. No character embodies this idea more than Athena. The goddess of wisdom doesn't simply hand Odysseus victories. She teaches him when to speak, when to wait, when to disguise himself, and when to reveal who he truly is. In the Odyssey, wisdom is never passive. It's a form of power. That same intelligence is reflected in Penelope. While Odysseus survives monsters abroad, Penelope survives a palace full of enemies at home. Surrounded by over 100 suitors demanding she choose a new husband, she doesn't overpower them. She outthinks them. For years, she delays them with a single act of quiet brilliance. Weaving by day, and secretly undoing her work each night. In many ways, Penelope isn't simply waiting for Odysseus. She's fighting her own battle, using the very same weapon he does: intelligence. Homer also gives remarkable influence to the women of the poem. Athena guides the hero, Circe transforms his understanding of the world, Calypso forces him to confront what he truly values, Nausicaa offers kindness when he has nothing left. Each woman shapes Odysseus' journey in a different way. They aren't simply rewards or obstacles. They are catalysts. They change the course of the story. This is what makes the Odyssey so fascinating. Power isn't measured only by armies or kingdoms. It's measured by influence, by wisdom, by patience, by the ability to see what others cannot. Again and again, the loudest characters fail because they mistake force for strength. The wisest succeed because they understand people. Thousands of years later, that idea feels surprisingly familiar. We still admire intelligence over brute force. Leaders who listen rather than command. People who solve problems instead of creating them. And perhaps that's Homer's greatest insight. Real power isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself, and knowing how to navigate a world far more complicated than any battlefield. Yet even the wisest person cannot control everything. Storms still come, people still make choices, the gods still intervene, which raises one of the Odyssey's oldest and most enduring questions. How much of our lives is written by fate, and how much is shaped by the choices we make? Throughout the Odyssey, the gods are everywhere. Athena guides Odysseus, Poseidon hunts him across the sea, Zeus watches over the balance of justice. Storms appear without warning, lives are changed by forces no mortal can control. At first glance, it seems as though Odysseus' fate was decided long before he ever set sail. But if that were true, then none of his choices would matter. And the Odyssey insists that they do. Homer presents fate not as a script, but as a destination. We know Odysseus is destined to return to Ithaca. Even the gods acknowledge it. But they never decide how he gets there. That part belongs to him. Again and again, it isn't fate that delays Odysseus. It's choice. His decision to reveal his name to Polyphemus. His crew's decision to eat the sacred cattle of Helios. Their inability to resist temptation. Their failure to trust good judgment. The gods create obstacles, but human decisions determine how those obstacles unfold. What's fascinating is that the gods themselves aren't all powerful. Athena can advise, but she cannot force Odysseus to obey. Poseidon can delay him, but he cannot stop destiny forever. Zeus repeatedly reminds both gods and mortals that people often blame fate for the consequences of their own actions. In Homer's world, divine influence is real, but so is personal responsibility. Perhaps that's why this theme still resonates. None of us chooses where we're born, the family we inherit, the hardships we encounter, the unexpected turns life takes. There will always be circumstances beyond our control, but within those circumstances, we still make choices. We choose how we respond, who we become, what kind of life we build despite the storms we didn't ask for. The Odyssey doesn't argue that life is completely determined, nor does it claim we're entirely in control. Instead, it suggests something far more balanced. Fate may shape the road before us, but character determines how we walk it. And perhaps that's the lesson every previous theme has been leading toward. Home, identity, pride, temptation, loyalty, wisdom, fate. They aren't separate ideas. Together, they answer a single question. What does it truly mean to be human? Nearly 3,000 years have passed since the Odyssey was first recited. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have changed. The world home anew has long disappeared. And yet, Odysseus' journey still feels strangely familiar. Perhaps that's because the Odyssey was never just about one man sailing home. It was about every journey that changes us. Every mistake we regret. Every temptation we overcome. Every loss we carry. Every hope that keeps us moving forward. Throughout his journey, Odysseus teaches us that home is more than a place. That identity is something we continue to shape. That pride can undo even our greatest triumphs. That character is revealed in the temptations we resist. That love is sustained through loyalty. That wisdom often proves stronger than force. And that while we cannot choose every circumstance, we can choose who we become in response to it. What makes Odysseus unforgettable isn't that he defeats monsters. It's that he struggles. He grieves. He makes mistakes. He doubts. He fails. And despite everything, he keeps going. That's what makes him human. Not perfection, perseverance. The Cyclops, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, they were never simply creatures lurking in distant seas. They are reflections of the fears, flaws, and choices that every generation must confront. The monsters may change, but the journey remains the same. Perhaps that's why the Odyssey has endured for nearly 3 millennia. Not because it gives us all the answers, but because it asks the questions that every generation must answer for itself. What are we willing to sacrifice? What kind of life is worth returning to? Who are we when no one recognizes us? And what does it truly mean to find our way home? Odysseus' voyage ends when he reaches Ithaca. Ours never really does, because every one of us will face storms we didn't choose, temptations that test us, and moments that force us to decide who we want to be. And maybe that's why, after all this time, the Odyssey still matters, because it reminds us that the greatest journeys are never measured by the miles we travel, but by the people we become along the way. And perhaps every journey begins with the hope of finding our way home.